Here's what's coming up.
Many American voters are hopeful that President Donald Trump's second term will usher in a period of economic prosperity. President Trump gives American users of Chinese-owned TikTok a reprieve, 75 days for the parent company ByteDance to strike a deal with a U.S. buyer. And while artificial intelligence has the potential to revolutionize the education and agriculture sectors in Africa, there is still skepticism. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54.
Many American voters are hopeful that President Donald Trump's second term will usher in a period of economic prosperity, much like they felt during his first term. However, the economy he is inheriting this time round is markedly different from the one he inherited 8 years ago, pre-pandemic, and he faces new challenges. We learn more in this Voice of America report.
American voters elected Donald Trump as president primarily to fix the economy.
My economy was much better under him than it is now.
It's important for him to get back in office, for me, to help our economy to get back to where we were.
But the economy Trump is inheriting today is quite different from the one he inherited from President Barack Obama 8 years ago, and he faces many new challenges.
Trump took office in 2017 amid a relatively benign economy. There had been slow but steady growth out of the Great Recession, which ended in 2009, and Trump caught that wave. So that was a period of relatively low inflation. Job growth was improving.
There was also a boom in hydraulic fracturing, or fracking, which increased domestic oil and natural gas production. Consumers' gas bills went down. Some also benefited from Trump's 2017 tax cuts.
Our economy is the envy of the world, perhaps the greatest economy we've had in the history of our country.
But then came the global pandemic of 2020, crippling the U.S. economy and sparking the highest inflation since 1981. President Joe Biden, near the end of his term, defended his handling of the recovery.
And all told, in 4 years, we've created 16.6 million new jobs, the most of any single presidential term in history.
But consumers are still dissatisfied, and analysts say the pandemic may have inflicted long-term damage.
COVID changed things in ways that I don't know if they're permanent, like they're going to be here forever, but they changed ways that are definitely affecting the economy today.
They include a higher inflationary environment and explosion of the national debt, which could make it harder for Trump to repeat his tax cuts or pass other legislation that would run up the deficit. That said, the economy has come a long way since Trump left office 4 years ago.
Trump is inheriting a good economy. There's no doubt about it. We've got, job growth just continues to surprise everybody. We had another blowout employment report for the month of December, and inflation has been coming down. So the trends are going in Trump's direction. And the main challenge for Donald Trump is just don't blow it, man.
But many economists fear his proposed tariff hikes on China, among others, could do just that, spike inflation. In addition, critics say his plan to deport undocumented immigrants en masse could hamper growth. And then there's another factor, climate change.
Certainly, we are seeing a lot more consequences of climate change, and they're a lot more palpable, I think, to people even than they were 8 years ago.
Think of the deadly wildfires in Los Angeles or the devastating floods in North Carolina last year. Such disasters can affect the economy in many ways, from destroying agricultural crops and infrastructure to disrupting supply chains.
Some of these things tend to be local, regional, state issues, but ultimately financial liability, can end up on the federal government's doorstep.
But as voters eagerly await Trump to shake up the economy, a word of caution.
The reality is that the president just does not control the economy as much as any president likes to believe. There are always a mix of factors. that contribute to whether people feel good or bad about the economy. And for the most part, they don't have to do with anything the president does.
The shares of U.S. technology giant Oracle jumped 8% after President Trump touted a joint venture with the U.S. investing up to $500 billion for infrastructure tied to artificial intelligence. Millions of U.S. TikTok users are looking to President Donald Trump, who has given the app's Chinese parent ByteDance 75 days to strike a deal with a U.S. buyer. VOA's Matt Dibble reports.
Yes, sir. Among President Donald Trump's first acts after being sworn in Monday was signing an executive order giving social media app TikTok's Chinese owner a 75-day extension to find a U.S. buyer or be banned in the country.
I guess I have a warm spot for TikTok that I didn't have originally, but I went on TikTok and I won young people up by 36%.
The move was the latest reversal of fortune for the platform's Beijing-based owner, ByteDance, and its estimated 170 million American users. The site briefly went dark over the weekend after the U.S. Supreme Court upheld legislation requiring that TikTok's U.S. affiliate become a U.S. company or be banned in the country due to national security concerns. But that changed after Trump began signaling support for an extension. TikTok CEO Xiao Chu, who was a guest at Trump's inauguration, thanked him in a video post on Friday.
We are grateful and pleased to have the support of a president who truly understands our platform, one who has used TikTok to express his own thoughts and perspectives.
But some legal experts say Trump's extension may not protect companies like Oracle that continues to host TikTok because the law enacted by Congress still stands.
It's quite possible, and I suspect that Oracle shareholders and some enterprising securities lawyers are thinking about this right now, it's quite possible that in the last 48 hours, Oracle has exposed itself to potentially hundreds of billions of dollars in liability, and there's nothing Trump can do to extinguish that liability.
Trump's action marked a sharp contrast to his first term in office.
We may be banning TikTok.
During which he sought to prohibit TikTok over allegations that the service could share U.S. user data with the Chinese government. In response to reporters' questions on Monday, Trump proposed a new solution, half ownership by the U.S. government.
But I could see making a deal where the U.S. gets 50% of TikTok, polices it a little bit or a lot, depends on them.
Though Congress originally gave TikTok 270 days to find a U.S. buyer, there has been no public indication of a sale in the works.
The fact that they have not allowed this, I think, is a sign that the Chinese government has real national security interests in maintaining the app as it is, which should really concern us and really underlines the original impetus for Congress to pass this bill in the first place.
TikTok's clock has been reset for another 75 days. But despite Trump's support, the company's future is still very much in question. Matt Dibble, VOA News.
Frenchie on the news.
On his first day on the job, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio met with his staff and spelled out his foreign policy priorities. He also met with allies from the Indo-Pacific region who seek to counter Chinese military and economic ambitions. VOA's Veronica Balderas Iglesias reports.
On his first day as U.S. Secretary of State, former Republican Senator Marco Rubio told his new employees that their department will promote peace around the world.
Without peace, it is hard to be a strong nation, a prosperous nation, and one that is better off.
But avoiding conflict will be a strategic decision.
But never at the expense of our national security, never at the expense of our national interest, and never at the expense of our core values as a nation and as a people.
Rubio also met Tuesday with the foreign ministers of India, Australia, and Japan. The four countries formed the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, or Quad, a bloc that aims to counter China's economic and military ambitions in the Indo-Pacific region. Tuesday's gathering eased some concerns about the America First approach under President Donald Trump.
It's a clear signal that U.S. is not abandoning the regional coalition, allies and partners in terms of how to counter China's rise.
Beijing denounces the Quad as a Cold War construct.
Anytime that the U.S. aligns with its allies and partners, the Chinese will feel isolated and feel threatened. And They will accuse the United States of the Cold War mentality.
The analyst pointed out that China's modernization and expansion of its military and nuclear arsenal will only continue driving countries in that region to strengthen their own militaries and seek a closer alignment with the United States. Verónica Valderas Iglesias, VOA News, Washington.
For more insight on U.S. presidential cabinet nominee hearings, I'm joined from here in Washington by Bruce Fein, an American lawyer specializing in constitutional and international law. Bruce, how early does the president notify who he intends to nominate, and what does it take to prepare for tough questions on Capitol Hill?
Well, there's no particular standard. Some choices are more difficult to fill than others. Presidents typically consult his advisors, members of Congress, who he thinks will pass the majority in the Senate that's needed for confirmation. There's nothing in the Constitution that forces an early nomination rather than a later nomination. Sometimes there are particular efforts that have to be undertaken to do a background investigation. So there's no cookie cutter approach to this. Now, what does typically happen is after a nominee is selected, they'll do an FBI investigation. Sometimes they're more thorough than others. There's nothing in the Constitution other than the president's reluctance to send up a name that could be ambuscaded by unknown allegations that surface later. We saw that a little bit with the nominee of Brett Kavanaugh to the U.S. Supreme Court, and even with Pete Hegseth, the nominee to be Secretary of Defense, with related sexual abuse allegations. Typically what happens was when a nominee is selected, they will have what we call kind of a moot court in the White House, where they're presented with surrogates for the committee that will oversee the hearing, and they'll be confronted with questions that they anticipate will be asked by their friends and their critics. And that's how they prepare for the nomination hearing.
So would you say, Bruce, that the nomination approval is wholly guided by ethics, and that the nominee's personal record, or or can the president at any point interfere with the process if he really wants that person in the position he wants to nominate him for?
Well, virtually all of the nominations and the process are political. A president, if it really wanted to support a nominee, could go to perhaps a senator who's wavering, supporting and opposing, and say, well, I'll build a bridge, or I'll build a hospital, or I'll do another favor, I'll enact or sign a bill that you propose. These kinds of deals are usually made sotto voce, in the background that can't be seen. But the president has a whole host of quid pro quos that he can exert if he really cares strongly about a nominee. On the other hand, if he wishes not to care much about a nominee, says you're out on your own. You have to win on your own credentials, and that's it. So, of course, it's up to the president to decide whether he wants to trade, executive discretion for a nominee or withhold it. But most of the time, if he cares enough about a nominee, he can get anybody through the confirmation process.
Typically, Bruce, what are nominees perhaps most excited about or fearful about during the vetting process?
Well, the two things that are always fearful is that there'll be someone with ulterior motives and make some spectacular allegation on the media saying, he was a child molester, he stole money, or did something very, very evil. And oftentimes, as you know, a lie gets halfway around the world before truth gets its trousers on. And at this time, when there's polarization, something like that can make a great deal of headway. So there's always that worry. And there's also the excitement is, well, I have an opportunity to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States and to support the president and his program. And that's most of the reason why they're there, is because the job, although it ordinarily doesn't pay as much as they're making in the private sector, is an obvious opportunity to contribute to the nation above themselves.
Bruce, thank you very much. We don't see much of that open process in some other places, so thank you for your insight. Bruce Fein is an American lawyer specializing in constitutional and international law. Months of shaky ground in the Rift Valley of East Africa and parts of Ethiopia has forced authorities to evacuate tens of thousands of people from dangerous volcanic and earthquake activity. Meantime, seismologists and geophysicists are trying to get as much information as they can about the dangers of the area. VOA's Philip Alexiou reports.
The Ethiopian Disaster Risk Management Commission reports the Afar and Oromia regions are near the epicenter of seismic activity. Ethiopia's government is monitoring the situation closely with seismologist experts. Cynthia Ebinger is professor of geophysics at Tulane University and has spent the past 35 years working in different parts of the East African Rift Valley. In an interview with VOA's Yehias Wuhib, she says there are concerns about the integrity of the dams in Ethiopia as they are near active fault lines.
In general, those dams are maybe not filled as high as they originally were planned as information became more available. And I know in the past that there have been some problems building dams in the Rift. There was a failed dam on the Kesem when there was an underground reservoir that was captured and caused failure of a dam before it was completed. So evacuating people from the downstream areas from the dams is a very important measure, because the shaking of these earthen dams can lead to cracks and may potentially a failure that could cause big harm.
Ebinger says along with local experts and European scientist evaluations, the U.S. Geological Survey is assisting the Early Warning Observatory in Addis Ababa.
There's a network of seismometers in the country that telemeters information to the observatory. They provide near real-time information on the locations of those earthquakes. They look for patterns in the earthquakes. There are differences in the kinds of shaking that happen that help us understand, oh, is it magma, or is there molten rock involved, or is it just a rock, an earthquake, a typical earthquake?
Ebinger says as experts evaluate the volcanic and seismic activity, the remote areas of these earthly disturbances highlights the need for more instrumentation.
One of the concerns, the biggest concerns at the observatory, is that they don't have enough instruments in the area to precisely determine the depth. And depth becomes important if hot material's rising upward. We want to track it over time. And without more instruments in this very active area, they can only do a kind of imprecise job.
Ebinger says without more evaluation instruments, it can be like surgeons trying to operate with mittens on their hands. Philip Alexiou, VOA News.
We'd like to hear what you think about Africa 54 and all our VOA Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. Still to come, we'll explore the potential of artificial intelligence. We'll be right back.
On the next Straight Talk Africa.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
Donald Trump on Monday was inaugurated as the 47th President of the United States. He started his presidency by signing close to 100 executive orders charting the new administration's priorities.
The golden age of America begins right now.
Join me, Vincent Makori, for an in-depth look into the new era that begins for the U.S. and its engagement with the world.
In other news, the cervical cancer rate in Namibia is 37.5 for every 100,000 women, about 3 times higher than the rate worldwide. Cervical cancer is one of the most preventable cancers, and doctors in Namibia are advocating greater access to health care and the HPV vaccine to reduce the prevalence of the disease. Citizens in Gabon are being encouraged to register this month to vote in the presidential elections scheduled for August, as ordered by Transitional President General Brika Clotaire Oligui Nguema. The planned elections are envisioned to end a 2-year transition to civilian rule. Voter registration began in January and is due to conclude at the end of this month. And more than 1,700 black South African servicemen who died in non-combat roles on the Allied side during World War I are finally being recognized with a memorial more than 100 years later. The members of the Cape Town Labour Corps had been ignored in British colonial and then apartheid South Africa, largely because they were black. One descendant says his family only knew that his great-grandfather went to war and never came back. Artificial intelligence has the potential to revolutionize sectors like education and agriculture, drive economic growth, and address key challenges in Africa. But skepticism remains, and there is a need to bridge gender gaps in technology, ensuring no one is left behind as the continent embraces AI. VOA's Paul Ndiho spoke with Sarah Luyele Njamu, the CEO of Johannesburg-based CompuConnect Education and a passionate advocate for Africa's leadership in the AI revolution.
So AI has gained momentum on the continent, and we are leading the charge. We are saying Africa must take a leading role when it comes to the AI revolution. We do not want to sit on the sidelines and just wait for the world to move on. So yes, people on the continent are very engaged. There's a lot of momentum. There's a lot of excitement around this technology. Obviously, there's a lot of caution around it as well. As you know, people are concerned about the ethics that come with it, much as it produces a lot of great opportunities.
How can people leverage AI and the different tools that come with AI to better their lives, to improve their economies, to improve education, agriculture, and all these other places where AI can be impactful?
It's about embracing the new technology and just having clarity of understanding that the new dispensation is here. A lot of literature will tell you that AI is going to change the world far much more than electricity did. So the shift is real. So there's no debate about it. It's about embracing and equipping ourselves with the new skill sets that are needed to thrive in the new AI revolution, because everything is being driven by AI.
What opportunities are there? For example, there is a lot of hype about AI, but at the same time, there are people who are skeptical about AI and what AI could bring to the continent.
AI delivers a lot of benefits. So a lot of what we are seeing in organizations that we work with, that we are helping with implementation, is just the speed of delivery. So it brings unprecedented efficiencies within an organization. And sometimes the startup investment might be expensive, but in the long run, AI brings down the cost of operation. So cost saving is something that is also driving, AI adoption, as well as the efficiencies that AI delivers within organizations. I mean, even at individual level, if you use even a simple tool like ChatGPT, you know how much it saves your time, your writing time, and your proofreading or your editing. So we're seeing that the same is being translated in other areas of business as well, depending on the tools that are being implemented.
You are organizing one of the biggest AI conferences in Lusaka, Zambia. It's coming up very soon. Do you care to share with us what this conference is about and what are some of your expectations?
Absolutely. So we have been running the future of artificial intelligence in Africa the past 2 years, and this year, this will be the third Future of AI in Africa Global Summit. And really the heart of this gathering is to take all the Africans and come together so that people can start engaging and start developing the proper ecosystem that will ensure that Africa flourishes. So really, we actually say this is a movement. It's not just a conference. It's a movement where we are calling people on the continent to awaken and to collaborate and to let the borders fall off so that we can actually raise a critical mass that is driving artificial intelligence on the continent, so we can actually be able to see the real benefits of it.
You've been teaching a lot of people on the continent. You've been trying to get people up to speed. A lot of women feel like they are left behind when it comes to technology. This is an opportunity for them maybe to catch up or to even to be key players in this space. To what extent are women really picking up some of these tools and playing around with them?
So your observation is spot on. Women have always lagged behind when it comes to technology. The unfortunate reality is that that reality then shifts to AI, because AI is being built on the foundation of the technologies that already exist. So the fact that we do not have a lot of women that study STEM subjects, it's a challenge. Yes, women participation is a gap, and it's a challenge, and it needs to be addressed urgently.
That was Sarah Luyele Jamu, the CEO of CompuConnect Education, speaking to VOA's Paul Ndiho. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.